Bella
Olam
Asher Shanu
B'mitzvotav
B'mitzvotav
V'tzivanu
V'tzivanu La'asot
B'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, that's cool. Sunday, March 3rd. Sunday, March 3rd, Michael Tushin and the Israeli Consul General will be speaking at Resnick. I don't think it's they're zooming it. I think it's all real. Risa and I are going to be there. I think it should be excellent. And Michael, of course, you know, is the current real president of AIPAC. And the Consul General. So it should be a very interesting presentation on Sunday. Then I think it's 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. Then on Tuesday, March 5th, Super Tuesday, it's going to be one of those hallmarks of the political year. Wednesday, March 6th, current events. And I was just chatting with Steve Miller last night. The good news about running a program on current events dealing with Israel and the United States is that we never run out of material. Never, never. Thank God the world is falling apart around us and we have a lot to talk about. So that's Wednesday, March 6th. Thursday, March 7th. I don't know if you've seen any publicity about it. I haven't seen much. The State of the Union address. And it was like, really? I had to go look it up. It says Thursday, March 7th.
That's right.
So I will be watching that, and everyone there will be watching to see if President Biden makes linguistic blunders. That they're going to be more interested in that than in what he has to say. Sunday, March 10th, Oscars. Saturday, March 16th, a little bit from now, but we're going to have our Siyum, our close of the book of Exodus, which is hard to believe. All that's a lead up to a very personal and important invitation. Okay, Donna is here, and I want to mention that I begged everyone to come to Michael Tushin's presentation, Donna. So you should, right? I did it. You didn't hear it, but I want credit.
You get 100% credit and extra points.
Ooh. Ooh. Okay.
Thank you.
Sunday, March 24th. This is new for many of you. For Sunday, March 24th, 10 a.m. again, Leah and I are finally invited to make a presentation about our book on disruption at Wilshire Boulevard at Resnick. I know that some of you have heard me speak about it. I know that a number of you have bought the book, and all that is great. But quite frankly, I'm looking to generate attendance. If you have nothing better to do, and that could be a very long list, but if you have nothing better to do, please try to join us Sunday, March 24th, 10 a.m. We're going to talk about the book. It's going to be very intelligent. The books are going to be there for those who haven't purchased. And we will sign books. And if you've already bought a book and isn't signed, you may want to bring it and, oh my God, I'll sign it. Even though you bought it a month ago or whatever. Okay, so that's a very busy month of March. I did not mention the Ides of March, but I figured that life is terrible enough without mentioning the Ides of March. Cindy, you're here?
Yes. It should be in the Wilshire Weekly this week. We're having a tour of the Adamson House, which is a historic house up PCH. It'll be Wednesday, March 27th. It's only $7 to go. We'll be having an optional Greek lunch afterwards. So look for it. There's limited registration. So if you want to go, do it quickly.
Okay, thank you for that. Jim is not on. Okay, so before we get started, Merle, you have a question.
I just wanted to say I'm not jumping off the face of the earth, but I have to leave a little early to go claim Sasha. And also, I have the book and I've read it, but we will be driving back from LA that morning, so I can't come. If it's like Zoomable, we can watch it in the car.
I don't think it's Zoomable.
I don't think it is either.
It's like Michael Tushin's present. There's certain
Right.
things they're just doing live, and
Just,
that's all they're doing.
I've read it and it's amazing.
I'm sorry. What?
I've read it and it's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Just keep glowing. Go for it.
You know, it's weird. Okay, that's fine. Okay, checking in, anything with a personal matter they would like to share with the community. If not, we can go forward. Donna?
I just want to say I love everybody and miss everybody. I can't buy a car yet, but it's just 10 minutes up the hill, and Hoover charged $55 for that. And by Wayburn, my Target department store, where the car will drive me my service. If anyone can go up the hill, Rabbi Nance did that for me before, and bring me back to the Target so I can attend the service. I miss everybody. You're my family, the only family I have here.
A message received,
Thank
and
you.
I know
Thank
that
you.
I can't respond to it, but if anyone can,
Yeah,
that would
it'll
be
work
great.
out.
That would
Thank
be
you,
great.
Rabbi. Thank
Okay. All right, we're ready to go. Let's go. Let's go into Bible. And see what we're doing here. I don't know what we're doing here. If we would please turn to page 587, verses 12 through 18. 587, Exodus chapter 31, 12 through 18. If you could
31.
all get there. Howard, by the way, I should mention, yes, I saw a lot of your family last night. I didn't see you, but I don't want to point that out because that could be embarrassing. But I did enjoy being with your family last night. So, okay. This is a huge section dealing with Shabbat. By the way, in case you'll miss it, yes, this is the Sedra that talks about the golden calf, and we're not talking about the golden calf. But I don't want you to think that I missed it. Now, verses 12 really through 17 of chapter 31, all about the Shabbat. Would someone be willing to read this out loud? It's important. I want to talk about what's in this section. Do we have a reader? 12 through 18? Okay, Howard, please go ahead. Even though I know you have a different translation, and that's why you raised your hand. But go ahead.
And the Lord said to Moses, saying, And you speak to the Israelites, saying, Yet my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you for your generations, to know that I am the Lord, who hallows you. And you shall keep the Sabbath, for it is holy to you. Those who profane it are doomed to die. For whosoever does a task on it, that person shall be cut off from the midst of his people. 6 days shall tasks be done, and on the seventh day, an absolute Sabbath, holy to the Lord. Whosoever does a task on the Sabbath day is doomed to die. And the Israelites shall keep the Sabbath, to do the Sabbath for their generations, a perpetual covenant. Between me and the Israelites, it is a sign for all time that 6 days did the Lord make heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he ceased and caught his breath. And he gave Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the covenant, tablets of stone written by the finger of God.
Okay, that's a pretty heavy line, by the way. Oh, yeah, by the way, he was holding tablet that the finger of God engraved. Okay, just a little throwaway. Folks, I want to focus on this a little bit this morning. What's going on in this paragraph? And what does it mean to you, 21st century Jews, that this is clearly not the only Sabbath passage in the Torah? It is a very long and extended Sabbath passage, and it certainly offers some very strong incentives for people to observe. What do you read here? What matters to you out of what is talked about here? I think it's really important. So, what do we have? Steve, what do you got? And then Susie?
I think it points out that at that time in the world, people didn't take a break. And it was an early recognition of how important it is for people to get away from work and have time to themselves. And it's good for mental health and physical health. And I believe people have noted that that is probably the biggest contribution to humanity of the Jewish people, to actually develop the notion that people should have this day off every week.
Thank you, Susie.
My first reaction reading it and listening to Howard read it is that God was too threatening. I don't like being threatened with death. And my question, if it's possible, in your research, Rabbi, did anybody die in those days because they didn't keep the Sabbath?
Yes.
Yes? Yes? Okay.
Don't be disappointed in me. I didn't write it. But yes, someone was gathering sticks or whatever it was on Shabbat, and they yes, death. Okay, I see Mara, I see Donna.
So there are many different ways to look at death. And I look at this as a spiritual death, not an actual physical death.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Donna.
I agree with Susie and Mara. I think it's a spiritual death. And it's really hard for me not to be able to see everybody and lighting the candles and everything. And it's just, I had light at home. But again, the Lord's here, Adonai's here, but it's nothing like being together with Susie. I just miss Susie's smile. I miss your laugh. I miss Risa.
Okay, wait. We're talking about the text.
I know. I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
but I'm talking about the Shabbat
Kevin.
and the holiness of it and people getting struck dead. I think I agree. It's a spiritual death.
Kevin.
Okay, I see it as a conundrum. If you're following the Sabbath, how can you see if someone else isn't? If someone else isn't and no one sees them that they're not, are they committing a crime? That's the conundrum I see.
That is a good conundrum. The rabbis talk about that. Donna.
Well, I agree that it's a nicer way to perceive the text, to say it's a spiritual death they're talking about. But I think they're talking about really being put to death. But I think the more important phrase that means something maybe today is the idea of being cut off from your people. So it's like, if you don't participate in this, you are no longer part of the group. And that is the spiritual death. But I think they were reinforcing it with the idea of real death. So not to do it.
Okay. Do we have anyone else who would like to jump in on this? There's so much here, and I have to assure you, mostly people read past it and don't even think about it. Okay? I see Rebecca.
I have a question. It's something that I wrote maybe last year or the year before. that I wrote after verse 17, that it's a cosmic vishamru. What does that mean? Why did I write that? Why is the sign of vishamru?
So you wrote down cosmic vishamru, and now you want us to do a Rashi on what you wrote, and that's reasonable. And Vishamru v'nei Israel et Shabbat, and the Jewish people should keep the Sabbath. Oti the olam, it is a sign forever. Kisheshet yamim Adonai, God made the world in 6 days. V'yom hashivi Shabbat vayinafash. How did I do? Is that okay? That's cool. Preparation took 80 years to master. Now, there are two major reasons for Shabbat given in the Torah. What are the two major reasons? They're not the same. We have one of those reasons here. What are the two reasons in the Torah for keeping Shabbat? Okay, Brad?
Well, one of them that's here is that it's a sign of the covenant. And that puzzles me.
Well, the sign of the covenant that God made the world in 6 days. On the seventh day, God rested. That's the whole line. Oti lolam. It's a sign forever. Kisheshet yamim. God made the world in 6 days. Let's just finish the question. What's the other reason given?
May I say, Rabbi?
Please.
Holiness, to be holy.
No, that's not the reason given in Torah.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay, Howard.
As a remembrance of the Exodus from Egypt.
Thank you.
There you go.
Now we're going to deal with that. Here, the reason is very clear. Keep the Sabbath. It is a sign. Verse 17, for 6 days God made heaven and earth. Seventh day, God, who belonged to a labor union, had a day off. Okay, let's pick up some more answers here. Okay, Risa, I see you. Okay, please.
I had a question.
I can't hear you, hon.
Not muted. I had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
In all of this, again, they don't define the word work. And I have a note here that says, is work only if you're creating something, or is it building?
Just to answer that as a technical question, Risa, the rabbis try to figure out what is malacha, what is work, and they defined work as those activities that went into the building of the tabernacle. So when you talk about how the tabernacle was constructed, if they wove carpet, forbidden. Okay, everything connected, that was the major categories of work, and I assure you that it expanded beyond that. But the base, to answer your question, which was their question, what is work? It's the work that went into, the reason they connected is that here it says malacha as the Hebrew word for work, and in the building of the tabernacle, it's called malacha in building the tabernacle. And so they made the connection, and that answered the question. Brad.
Rabbi, I'm coming back to the use of the word covenant here.
Yes.
Because I thought the covenant was the brit, and now we're being told that observing Shabbat is our covenant with God. Does this supersede the brit then?
No. Look at verse 17. Oti la'olam. It is a sign between me. It is a sign of God's activity. It's a sign of the covenant. The Shabbat is not the covenant.
But in the verse 16, it says, observing the Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time.
Okay, and then I'm going to retreat into the language of Torah, brit is used in multiple ways. One is, if there were capitals, capital T, capital B, the brit, the covenant. And that's one thing. The other, there are covenants that are made, and this language is like that. It is a covenant, an agreement that we're supposed to do this. It's not a replacement covenant. Did that work? Brad, did I drive you off?
No. I mean, I understand what you're saying. It just another example to me of confusion in the text.
There's a lot here that we haven't yet even touched on, including killing people for not observing it. And there's another one, but Mara wants to speak first.
We're talking about what we shouldn't do to observe Shabbat, but I'd like to know what we should do. So I think back to something that Rabbi Joel Simons once said, and I think he said it about Shabbat and about other Jewish holy days. He said it's important to make it different, to do something to make it different. But my question is still, if we're not to do all of these things, what should we do? What does the word rest really mean for us? And I struggle with that as I try to make the day different and I try to observe. I'm conflicted about what I should be doing.
That's super. Thank you. One of the many words that read simply in this section, which is why I turn to it. It's kind of like we take it far too casually. We look at this and don't pay attention. The word rest isn't the Hebrew. That's an English word. If you look at the Hebrew of verse 17 at the end, 6 days God made heaven and earth, uvayom hashvi'i, and on the seventh day, hear the word Shavat. And that's the verb out of which Sabbath emerges, right? And Shavat could very well be of the same kind of a root that gave you shave, to sit, do nothing. Maybe. Shavat is a cessation from work. There's an expression in the Talmud, Shev al taseh, sit, do nothing. It's doing nothing. And then the last word, Mara, is a word that is very controversial. No one knows how to translate it. So we have to be careful not to build what Heschel would have called castles in the sky on a word we can't really translate. Vayinafash comes from the word soul, nefesh, right? It's nefesh. And God did a Shabbat and nefeshed. And what does that mean? And I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to give you happy conclusions because there are multiple translations. Vayinafash, God rested. That's one translation. It's not in the Hebrew root. God refreshed the divine soul. Vayinafash. God responded to the soul. That was there. I have to tell you, sometimes I read that as relaxed by Nafash, that God took a break. And did it mean more than that? In other words, is there a deeper meaning? The Kabbalists will say a whole big deal about soul enrichment. Okay, and that's in the Hebrew. It could be. But Mara, that was a long answer to a question that I can't answer. And it's real, no, but it's really important. And I can't answer it because there are just multiple answers. What does Shabbat mean? God Sabbathed, rested, sat, stopped. I am happy with relaxed of the burdens of the rest of the week. And that's clearly not what the translation is, but it's good for me. Tamara, can you come in here and do a little better work on Vayinafash?
Well, I think of it, no, not really. You said it all, but I think of it as resold oneself, having the nefesh. And nefesh is not just soul separate from body, it's embodied spirit. That's what nefesh is. So it's refreshing or restoring, making room for the fullness of the life and the nefesh and the being.
And thank you, Tamara. One of the interesting things about a word that we can't exactly translate, but we have a sense of where it's headed, is that in each generation, interpreters have filled that word with meaning that speaks to them. And I have no problem with that. In other words, we are today thinking about resouling. Okay. I mean, that's not something that would have been said. Tomorrow, please.
I'm just thinking the contrast is between Shashet Yamim Masah tonight, for 6 days God was doing. And Vainafash means it's not doing, but it's about being. So to stop doing and start being in a moment, being in the time, just sitting and letting it be.
Okay, and that kind of responds to, I know what we're told not to do. What are we told to do? And one of the things that Tamara is saying is, let go and be. Even though that is a very easy thing to say and difficult to translate even in the English. Okay, I see, what do I see over here? Kevin, and then Steve and Howard and Risa and Donna. Oh, okay, we got everybody.
Okay, I wanted to say there's a difference between what God does and what we do on the Sabbath. God wants the appreciation. God said, "Let there be light," and then, I guess a week later, he appreciates the light or wants other people to appreciate for him. And we're working, or when I say working, we're praising God. But maybe we should appreciate what we've done for the past week, and reflect on what's been done, and basically just a reflection on what we've done in that short period of time.
I like that. I mean, that's good. It's a time to stop adding on new things. It's a time to reflect on where we are, where we've been, and to appreciate that. By the way, it's interesting. One of the things that we're not supposed to do on Shabbat, sitting around Saturday afternoon, is to study new material. It's a very interesting limitation. You're supposed to sit around the Saturday noon lunch table and talk Torah and talk about things of substance, but you don't study something new. So, Kevin, this reflects back a little bit on pause, contemplate, be aware, and think back and examine your place in the world. All good things. And don't make it a time when you're still trying to conquer something new. You want to learn something new. You want to get another parsha. You want to get another sedra. You want to get another word. Don't do that. Think about where you are. Think about where you've come. Think about what's important. And by the way, I have to emphasize, and eat a great deal, because the other requirement, clearly, after a big Shabbat meal around the table where you are supposed to reflect on Old Torah, on the world, is to take a nap. That is a very Jewish action for Shabbat. Steve.
God takes a day off after creation. My question is, does God take a Shabbat every week? We pray. God's job is to hear our prayer. So if he takes a day off, it doesn't seem to coincide with his responsibility to us in the world to look over us and hear our prayers.
Well, first of all, I'm totally comfortable that God can multitask. I have, I think God can do that.
You can't work and not work at the same time.
You can't work and not work.
Oh, yeah, I can.
And we're talking about God. Come on, give a break. But the not working for God is the end of creation. It's not a weekly thing. God worked for 6 days to put the universe into motion and then stopped. That's not a repeated activity.
When he's working, when he's talking to Moses and leading the people and creating fires and clouds, isn't that work?
Steve, you're pushing. You're pushing me. I have
That's my job.
I have every confidence that the God you worship has all the skills necessary to keep the place running. The thing that would interest me is, why is Shabbos? Is it creation? Is it Exodus? Why were two things offered? And then I'm going to say to you, and what happened to the Exodus excuse? It fades away in the face of the creation excuse. And there is more stuff connected with that, because if you then go into the rabbinic texts and talk about all the emphasis on God, not the temple, the rabbi text, the Bible. In the Bible, it doesn't spend as much time worrying about God giving Torah. The rabbis, in brilliant, careful thinking, make choices and never say that getting out of Egypt is more important long term than the giving of Torah. But if you're going to talk about emphasis, from my perspective, and I'm open to criticism on this, I think the rabbis spend a lot more time on the Exodus from Egypt, and the stories that surround that. It's very interesting how the rabbis don't ever, usually don't say that's nonsense or that's not the big thing here, but they simply focus on what they consider the big thing. And it's our job to listen and to pick that up, Howard.
I think it could be a very prosaic and straightforward thing. God was working very hard for 7 days, very hard, 6 days, doing all these things and miracles and so on. in creating the universe. And on the seventh day, he was out of breath. So seventh day, he caught his breath.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of spa God would go to on the seventh day. Can you picture it? What do you think? A steam bath? I think a steam bath.
I think a deli.
Okay. So we have that. I'm going to throw something else out here. This is it's worth this simple, obvious thing that we don't spend any time looking at is so filled with stuff. Folks, the rabbis want to know why this passage is here. Why is it here? We already had 10 commandments, keep the Sabbath, right? Why is this passage here? And the rabbis pick up something really, really interesting. There is a, hello, cat. Well, very nice to see you too. Okay. Yeah, this is a cat. Look at what immediately precedes this passage. What's being taught? Don't step on my keyboard. What is being talked about right before this passage? Look at it. What do you see? Donna.
It's all these instructions about the work that needs to be done by Bezalel to create the Mishkan.
And the rabbis say the pressure, the order, the commandment, the mitzvot to build the Mishkan, very serious, very detailed, very hard work. All this gold, all the other stuff there. And then, boom, keep the Sabbath.
And don't forget to rest when you're doing all this other stuff.
Even more. What might people think who are involved in developing the Mishkan? What could they be thinking about? This got to be done. We have to do it. Sacred work, all the symbolism, everything. We got to do it. And then this passage comes in and says, by the way, if you violate the Shabbat, you're toast. Right? Tamara.
I didn't have an answer to what you just said, but I thought a different one, that what it's saying, it equating the creation of the Mishkan with the creating of the world. So that God creates a world and Israel imitates God by creating something else, the Mishkan. And therefore, when Israel is done with the Mishkan, they have to rest too. So
okay. By the way, that is only something which can open up a whole month of study. Answer yes. The building of the Mishkan is a parallel to creation. And when God created the world, therefore we keep the Sabbath, we build the Mishkan. So Steve Miller's labor union is worrying about, we have this job, we have to build the Mishkan, we have to build it now. Oh, it's Shabbat. What do we do?
Rabbi, I know.
Please, go ahead, Donna.
I think it's because it's the bride, the Sabbath bride, that you're supposed to spend time with your husband that day and your wife. It's a day that you are to make a family and be with your family, and that's the sacredness of that.
Okay, but that doesn't address the question.
What we do, no, what you said, what do we do on Shabbat? Take a break and be with your wife.
Okay. What do we do if we're building the Mishkan and it's Shabbat? And Donna comes up with an elegant this. And the answer is yes, this. And there's even a statement by the rabbis that if you're building the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and you're building the Mishkan on Shabbat, I won't live there. Okay? I mean, that when I read that rabbinic opinion, wow! You know, God isn't just saying make a nice place, but don't you make it on Shabbat. Because if you do, your intention was great and your action is a sin. And by the way, we've talked about intentions and actions before. If your intentions were good, but your actions were violations, the project is tarnished. So the rabbis make a really big deal about what happened between the book of Exodus, chapter 31, verse 11, and verse 12. Verse 11, you're out there building the tabernacle, slam, but not on Shabbat. It's a wonderful juxtaposition. How do you negotiate getting through the world, doing the right thing, but without violating so many other things? God, is that a great sermon, Donna? Write it down. I expect you to use it. Write it down. You have this massive, important task, but you have to do an economic evaluation. What does your task cost, and when does it cost too much, no matter how precious the task? And in this case, violate Shabbat, you have invalidated the task, even though it is hugely important.
You're so smart, Rabbi.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What?
You're smart.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. It's not me. It's the text. It's what the rabbis have done. It's why we study. So I want to turn to this is an incredible passage. Verse 14. Please look at verse 14. You shall keep the Sabbath, and the word keep, ushmartem, vishamru. Keep the Sabbath, for it is holy for you. What does it say? Mechalaleha mot yumat. The word halal is one of those words which has multiple meanings. Multiple meanings.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, somebody who profanes it, that'll work. There are so many other meanings, including the cosmos, including soldiers who die in war. I mean, there are just all kinds of meanings to that very important word. Here, someone who profanes the Shabbat shall be put to death, and profaning the Shabbat here is working. Now, folks, something happens in the rest of the verse which should set off alarm bells. What does it say? One who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does work on it, that person shall be cut off. Okay, God, which is it? I mean, we read this and we don't pay attention and it slides right past.
Well, the first kind of leads to the second.
You think, Donna. The rabbis don't agree with you. Do not let that push you back from your position, as wrong as it is. But okay. The rabbis look at this and say, hey, this is a little confusing. How do we do it this way and that way? How does that work? And they came up with an answer, which I am not asking you to smile at. I am just asking you to listen. Who will be put to death for violating Shabbat? Somebody who was warned through a court shortly before the act of violation occurs that if you do this, you are toast. And then one more piece, even if you are warned in proper fashion, but there are not witnesses to what you did, you cannot be put to death for violating Shabbat. Wow. Okay? So you violate Shabbat, boy, you're going to be put to death. As long as you went to a court and the court warned you, and as long as you have witnesses, then you can be put to death. Now read the second part of the verse. Whoever does work on it, that person shall be cut off. What is the Hebrew word for cut off? There are some Hebrew scholars here.
Bris?
I'm not going to go there. But no, not that cut off. The Hebrew word, Donna?
Is it karet?
Yes, it is.
Oh, wow.
Now, karet is a very interesting word. And it covers, in some cases, punishments that cannot be carried out in this lifetime. There are certain punishments that people apply in their courts. But sometimes people violate things which are not visible. No witnesses. We don't know that they did it, but God knows. And karet is understood to be not a physical death in this world, but come the world to come, you will receive eternal punishment.
You're so right on, Rabbi.
Isn't karet also the verb used to cut a covenant?
Yes.
So that's
totally. Yes. Yes. But in talking about punishment, karet as a punishment, it is not applied by people. Karet, one of the ways in which karet is understood is premature death. And the rabbis, I have to be very careful how I say this because I know what I'm saying. I just can't say it right. One of the ways in which God punishes the unknown sinner is karet, is premature death. And then I have to really emphasize, am I saying that every person who dies young has been kareted? And please, no, I am not saying that. But in trying to understand this passage, die, clearly, you go to a court, you have witnesses, you put the turkey to death. But if you don't have witnesses and the person sinned, that person minimally will be punished by God in this world or the next. And I want to leave it there, because if you're pushing me on what I believe, I certainly do not believe that God uses premature death as a punishment. Period. I don't believe that. What the rabbis couldn't explain in this lifetime, they put it into God's hands and say, it'll be taken care of there. Kevin, you've had your hand up patiently for a long time.
Okay, I don't mean to add some senseless stuff, but I guess I will. I'm just wondering if this line is for the Jewish people or for not the Jewish people, like to put you to death, the people who don't follow the seventh day of rest. You can identify them as, well, they're not Jewish. So it's, are you destroying your enemies who are not Jewish? And then I've understood that the Jewish people are I don't know if you call them tribal people, but have been spread out through distances, but still maintain their Jewish tradition, and they can remember the seventh day. It's like some days I don't know if it's Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, however, to be able to travel, in the desert heat and always remember it's the seventh day, and then you meet up and everyone realizes it's the seventh day or it's not, I guess.
Okay, Kevin, these mitzvot are not for the non-Jew. No Gentile will ever be punished for violating Shabbat, because they are not obligated under covenant to keep Shabbat. So there is no concern that we're alienating and condemning the rest of the world. It's us. It's our thing. And I'm going to go to tomorrow. Then I have a really serious question in my notes that I need to ask you tomorrow.
Just a quick follow-up to what Mara said earlier. Another way of thinking of Vayikaret, the person would be cut off, is to say that person has cut off herself or himself by not being part of the community that keeps Shabbat. So there is no need to postulate any other form, God or anyone else, cutting the person off. If I'm not in the room doing Shabbat with my fellow Jews, I have cut myself off. So that's another way of thinking about that.
Totally, and thank you. Now, folks, we've spent 58 minutes talking about Shabbat. What's happened to it? You're reading a passage which cannot be more clear as to how important Shabbat is. There are passages about the festivals. There are passages about lots of other stuff. The passages about Shabbat are very serious. Take a deep breath. What is this saying to us today? And I know that's a troubling question. When I was a super arrogant young rabbi, I worked 7 days a week. I'd come home from services on Saturday and maybe the fancy oneg or whatever it was. And I would do something which absolutely I love and loved and which relaxed me. I gardened. That is a horrible violation of Torah law. That is a primary example of, first of all, to prove that God doesn't kill off evildoers with a premature death because I'm still here.
God bless you.
I gardened. And I know what I was doing. And I did it because it gave me my Shabbos. Tell me how we live with this passage in the Torah and match it with how we live. Please. I know it's a hard question. Okay, I see Brad. I see Cindy. Please, Brad.
Well, Rabbi, I want to turn the tables on you and ask you, what does the Reform movement tell us about how we should observe Shabbat?
I hate it when you do that to me. You know, I'm almost prone to, it's after 10 o'clock. I can't do this anymore. I'd love to be able to answer that, Brad. The Reform movement doesn't say should. It offers options and variety and stuff like that. It doesn't say this is what you should do. And in my eyes, that's one of the reasons why I raised this question today. Are there shoulds for Reformed Jews? Cindy, forgive me, we are
I'll be
late.
quick. So the difference is you garden for pleasure, to be with nature, as opposed to someone who is a landscaper or who's picking fruit to sell it. The difference is pleasure versus a chore or work. And so you were relaxing because you enjoyed it.
And it was the only time of the week I could do it. So it was Shabbos, a change of behavior. I wouldn't be mentioning it if it hasn't bothered me all these years. I did it. I understood why. It was good and it was wrong. Or was it? Tamara has been giving me a pass and says, no, it's not wrong. Okay, and I love you. Thank you for that. Thank you. We're going to have to...
Not wrong, Rabbi. It's not wrong.
We will go on to Kaddish now. But this simple passage just has a world to say to us. And thank you for sharing in the discussion. And boy, do I have a lot of stuff that, okay, next year.
Dan?
Yeah.
Stanley?
Ma'am.
From the chat?
Yeah.
How does cut off and sinning relate to atonement during Yom Kippur? That's from Rebecca.
Karet is usually understood to be in the hands of God. And that's the big difference. On Yom Kippur, you're going to be living through looking for atonement, for forgiveness. As long as we are alive, we have a chance to make up for some of the horrible things we did. Except for three things, you remember. murder, idolatry, sexual offenses. Those three cannot be wiped away through prayer and fasting. But everything else is subject to our fixing. I don't know, Rebecca, if that answered the question. I do have to move on, but karet is what God does when we don't fix and when we did things which cannot be fixed. I'm sorry. It's Torah. Those who have passed away during the past month: Paul Beck, Earhart, Myrna Engler, Leonore, Lottie First, Aaron Glazer, Thomas Kirk, Melvin Colwriter, Sarah Sumrai, Arlene Schaefer, Jessica Sobel, Paula Sunshine, Ida Tannenbaum, Dave Warren, Stanley Weiss. And the following the anniversaries of whose deaths have occurred during this past week: Alfred Adler, Jacob Armel, Leah Banks, Sidney Beckerman, Jacob Bender, Alfred Burke, Leonard Berman, Robert Berry, Sylvia Bialik, Alma Bogia, Carol Ann Brand, Ingrid Braslow, Martin Brown, Irving Birkin, Norma Candib, David Chorna, Sharon Croman, Stella Codd, Rose Kahn, Richard Gary Cooper, Kevin Davis, Robert Eric, Rebecca Miller Engel, Horatio Eppelbaum, Hugh Fate, Doris Fink, Irving Fink, Burton Friedman, Monty Friedman, Judith Gelb, Maurice Gersh, Robert Goldberg, Stanley Goldklang, Charlotte Goldman, Bram Goldsmith, Annette Goligorsky, David Goodman, Maria Goodman, Giza Gray, Daniel Grinstein, Lionel Harrison, Jacob Hers, Rebbe Yehuda Hasselkloff, Ethel Hoffer, Esther Elizabeth Hoffman, Sybil Hyman, Sharon Levy Jaffe, Ralph William Kalish, Robert Harry Carrots, Judy Carmen Ebrahim Kashami, Harry Kirshheimer, Leon Klappholz, Elizabeth Klein, Helen Klein, Martin Königsberg, Daniel Krasno, Yetta Krull, Joseph Kurtzman, Elizabeth Kurzina, Marcus Laib, Douglas Lamb, Oscar Lerman, Dave Levitch, Rose Levin, Jean Leiber, Olive Lipkin, Mildred Lomask, Nicholas Lubin, Shirley Malone, Stan Margulis, Murray Miller, Jack Nagar, Amin Nahal, Raymond Marshall Norton, Michael Polovoy, Annette Pollan, Robert Powell, Clem Preston, Eudice Polgar, Arpad Rev, Marshall Rissman, Victoria Robin, Aaron Roth, Marcella Elias Rothman, Marcy Rothman, Barbara Rothschild, Milton Rowan, Joyce Rubenstein, John Rubin, Frida Sandridge, Teresa Shapiro, Isaac Silver, William Sin, Leo Serrata, Alfred Skluth, Bertha Skolman, Nathan Solomon, Nathan Spielberg, Joe Stabler, Sandra Stein, Sarah Steinberg, Richard Sutkin, Stephen Tech, Jacob Tenser, Janet Tenser, Linda Tepper, Robert Tuchin, Aaron Tucker, Helene Groman Weiss, Milton Weiss, Edith Wixon, Audrey Woolsworth, Lillian Wurst, Eleanor Yawitz, Nancy Zeman. If there are other names we are remembering and you wish to speak them out loud now, please do, or to say them in your hearts. We remember as well those who died in defense of the United States and in defense of the state of Israel. We remember those who died through senseless acts of terror and horrible, evil acts of inhumanity. We mention as well and bear in our hearts those for whom there is no one to say Kaddish. We join together now we join together in the words of Kaddish. Yit Gadal, B'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, B'alma, Bivrach Irute, V'yamlich Malchute, B'chayechon Uvyomechon, V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'al Uvizman Kariv, V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Li'olam Yomei Omaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudisha, Berichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma, v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth. And let us say, Amen. Amen. Remember, March 3rd, 10 a.m., Michael Tushin, and then March 24th at 10 a.m., Leah and me. And have a great Shabbat, and thank you for
I'm having a great Shabbat because you are here now.
Shabbos.
Thank you so
Shabbat
much.
shalom.
Love everybody. Mwah. Bye. Shabbat.
I'm gonna go out and garden. Okay.
I'll be seeing you in every love you summer day, spring day. God bless. Mwah.
Shabbat.